The COVID aid bill has now passed the Senate, and they tried to stop it as much as they could, the Republicans, and in the end, none of them supported it. Like there was no. Is it bipartisan? Well, no, because none of the Republicans supported it. But like lots of Republican voters like it. But that would only matter in a democracy, I guess, Francesca. So like it passed, that's something. Anyway, it still has to go back to the House, and God only knows what's gonna happen there. But we wanted to let you know what's actually in it, because we have been, I think, rightly quite critical of the bill and all that's been done to it over the past few weeks. The various stages, from the checks not being 2,000 to the targeting debacles, and then they're taking down the unemployment amount. And there's lots that, and then no minimum wage increase. There was a lot that was done that was really bad. But that said, there is still some good stuff. So why don't we launch into that, give you a little bit of information about when you might expect some of the aid to come to you, that sort of thing. So it is $1.9 trillion, and only Democrats supported it, as we said. It spends most of the money on low income and middle class Americans and state and local governments, with very little funding going towards companies, and we'll actually break down the exact amounts. The plan is one of the largest federal responses to a downturn Congress has enacted, and economists estimate it will boost growth this year to the highest level in decades and reduce the number of Americans living in poverty by a third. That is according to Columbia University Center on Poverty and Social Policy. So let's take a look at what it actually does. The breakdown of the money. Look, there are some things like small business support, stuff like that, but a lot of it is going to individuals. That's in that light blue. Things on like unemployment, stimulus payments, things like that. Then you have money that goes to state and local governments, which is a good chunk there. Other healthcare spending. So it's actually, in terms of what was prioritized, it's pretty preferable to some of the earlier bills. We can actually see the direct comparison right here. You can see that businesses got, in prior aid bills, 37 or 31% of the money. In this case, they're getting about 4%, more of it going to individuals and also to state and local government. So all of that looks pretty good. We're gonna have some more information on how this might impact a couple of different types of individual people out there that might get some aid from this. But overall, Francesca, what do you think about what we got after all of this back and forth?
Right, after reading 628 pages, as if that was gonna stop it. Haha, we've got to make them read. No, it's huge. It's a huge amount of money. $1.9 trillion. I hope that is enough to get us through this moment. I know there's money for a vaccine, money for small businesses. I hope that this is it, but there are some pretty transformative pieces in this specifically, in terms of like child tax credits and increasing and extending those for an entire year. I think it's like $300 if you have a kid under 5, $250 if you have a child between 6 and 17, I think. So not bad. And honestly, after all this time, I wish it had more, but I truly hope that Democrats can get the upper hand on the narrative here and continue to hound the fact that no Republican voted for this incredibly important, not stimulus bill, rescue bill. And that's gonna be the reason that families of 4 are gonna have $5,600 in their pockets. So my biggest concern is that Democrats actually utilize this momentum and make sure that voters know who delivered such a huge plan to them.
Yeah, I'm glad that you focused on that, because it just can't be said enough. None of them supported it. Not even like the moderates. No. And they're apparently, they can do that because they look out there at the country and they say, my voters won't care. My voters have been convinced that the crisis doesn't actually exist, or if it's a crisis, the only crisis is that there are lockdowns and masks. And despite everything economically that's happened, still, like, by the way, the jobs numbers that were just released last week were really good, like over 1/3 of a million new jobs. And that still leaves like 9 million jobs less than we had a year ago. So still really bad economic situation. And yet, for the party that supposedly represents those with economic anxiety that have been left behind by government, ignored by government, they can just ignore them again and not do anything. to try to stop it by reading the stuff out loud and then not actually being there. Marsha Blackburn, she said over the weekend in an interview, like, we made sure that the American people knew what's in it, and I can vote no because I know what's in it because we had it read out loud, even though she left in the first half hour.
No.
But they're again rightly reading that their voters don't care about any of this. They like, sure, maybe they'd like insurance and a job, but they really got to focus right now on Dr. Seuss.
Yeah.
And so maybe they'll get to it at some point.
And it's more than that, John. It's that, and this is the reason that Democrats can't play as dirty and disgusting and ego-driven, even though many of them try, and I know we're going to talk about them. But is that Republicans have no problem withholding desperately needed aid to states and families and struggling unemployed folks right now. They have no trouble holding that back in order to win re-election or to score points against Democrats. For them, that people dying in squalor is worth it for them if they can say they stopped Democrats from bettering the American economy and helping people out. Doesn't matter. They just want to obstruct so that they can crash and burn the country even more so that they will then have a perfect platform to run against whomever, any Democrat in the next year. Like, that's the point.
Yeah.
And what's good about this package is that it kind of addresses the fact that we've been left with a horrible mess out of the Trump administration, of course, because of COVID, but on a number of things. We've got more and more money being funneled to the wealthiest folks in this country, less and less funds being given to the social safety net, so desperately needed. And rather than going sort of halfway about this, it is good that it's a $1 trillion number. It's almost $2 trillion. So it says that, Democrats are serious about turning this country around. They can get even more serious, and they still need to be pushed. We cannot sit on our laurels at all. But yeah, I think it is a good sign that this is the kind of funds we need to really push back against the right wing's agenda.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.